Mondo here, and welcome to my review of Wild Arms, which is a very classic Japanese role-playing game to PlayStation, right? So I have my hidden JRPG games that I like to work on a little bit every now and talk about some really old classic role-playing games. Wild Arms isn't that game that probably people actually have missed that much. It's like a very famous cult classic. But as I mentioned earlier, has been more like, okay, this game probably no one ever played. But I will say that Wild Arms 3 though, in the following franchise of Wild Arms franchise 1 to 5, a remake of the first one, haven't been played very much. And also like Wild Arms 2 wasn't released, for example, outside of it was released in Japan and US, didn't go to Europe and so on. So Wild Arms 1 then was pretty much the first JRPG to PlayStation 1. And it's a very classic game, right? And why is it so good? The first thing of all is to hear something here is the music. The music in this game is unbelievably good. And it's usually said that the actual ost of the game, the soundtrack of the game, will sell more copies than the actual game. And it's like it's an amazing music, really is. Like as soon as I hear it in the opening, the hair here, before I'm talking here, as soon as I hear that, I'm always like, wow, like this is completely goosebumps, almost crying every time. No, but really, it's amazing songs in the game. And also I go to top lists and so on, and when we do like game quizzes, music quizzes, so on, friends and so on, it's very common through like some kind of town music for Wild Arms. It's very good. I think this intro and like Suikoden 2 and Chrono Cross Intro Time of Scars, definitely the top 3 like very classic, absolute most classic JRPG intros in my opinion. So anyway, so maybe just the music itself is really good. So what other points do the game have then that makes it great? So the game is to play as Rudy, Jack, Cecilia, with also more supportive characters. And first of all, the game is doing interesting. It starts by playing either of the characters individually, make us to learn their backstories a bit, see how they look at the world and so on, right? And then eventually, if you play all 3 of them, they're all gonna end up together as a classical role-playing party. So there's an interesting setup in the beginning as well. And you can get the motivation and so on, which I really enjoy. And I don't talk much of story about right now or using the general in this review, but the story is really fantastic. There's a lot of good points in the story, a lot of twisted, very interesting setups and so on. Talk more about it later in the review, how it sets up like enemies in the game and so, which I think is very great. But generally, it's quite a dark themed storyline. Most of the characters are definitely quite gruesome, and some good build-up scenes and so on. Generally, a very good story. The story is really good in the game. I didn't want to spoil here because this is one of the games that I do this review right because I want people to play this. This game is released 21 years ago, but I want to pick up the game, I want to buy the game, I want to play the game. So I don't want to spoil the story. There's a lot of twists and so on, but yeah, let's say it again, story's great. So one thing though with this game though is it's really old. You can maybe even see it here, the image here, right? No, but it's like this game is old, okay? And I would say one thing though you have to look away from playing this game is the graphics. The graphics in the game are pretty bad. Like the graphics weren't even. I personally didn't even like the graphics that much when I was a kid playing this game. So when this game was released in '96, was the first game. I bought this game and I bought FF7. It was the first 2 games I bought with my PlayStation. So I bought them at the same time there. And yeah, FF7 you have to live with Cloud and so on, having kind of block arms. So of course you were kind of used to it. You saw because the gameplays, the battle in the game I'll show you soon here are quite like they're squid, and that is something you have to look away from. And I will say though, even back then, it wasn't like it didn't look that good in my opinion. It was pretty cool because one of the first 3D games ever in a way, but it was like. So they're trying their best, right? This was pretty much the first role-playing 3D game ever released, and they just did what they could, right? But I will have to say that sometimes actually the effects looked really cool when the explosions are very square, and sometimes they the VFX actually kind of works. But generally, yeah, this is the game's biggest flaw today, for sure. But I think it's kind of cute though, because on the same time doing this thing, they also use the classic like Super Nintendo 2D squares. You see this in the city here, you still have this kind of thing. Same thing as Suikoden 2 did, and Suikoden 1 for that matter, right? And so on. And I think that is really nice. And if you look at Wild Arms 3, they use cel shading and so on. But basically, when you move around in the town, they do keep using this like very classic. You call it like the early 90s role-playing system, right? And their game looks beautiful instead. So I think that, and obviously also of course with like Breath of Fire, Suikoden and so on, as I mentioned, those games in my opinion look even better than most other like 3D games. So if you look at FF7, what that game used, that game look horrendous when you move around, right? So I think that game here will look better because it kept the 2D style of Super Nintendo, but made it with the newest PlayStation graphic data. I think that looks great. So talking about the game's combat and also the puzzles in the games. This image here shows that we are playing Jak here. So you have to pick your current main character. This is same in all of games. And then they have their different tool sets which you can utilize them. And let me explain how it works. So the game has, I think, very good puzzles actually, like hard to sometimes. So how it works is that you have 3 different characters, right? And there are 4 different key items each which you can use in this like 2D world I just mentioned. And that kind of is like a Zelda feel to it. You kind of have to do this thing here, use the rat there, use this thing there, use this thing, right? And if you unlock something new, you can go return to older dungeons, return to older castles, or just generally go to a town. Oh no, you can jump over here because this thing. There's a lot of like exploration, a lot of discovery in the game and so on. And sometimes I would say the puzzles actually are really hard. Not like it's amazing hard, but like quite hard actually to figure out how to do it and so on. With the correct items, even having the right items. And that is something that franchises generally have kept over, I think all of the games. What else 3 had, for example, took it even further, but they also added in that, if you done all the puzzles in the game, the secret puzzles in the game, you can also unlock a secret boss and so on. So took it even a step further, right? But generally, the game, I think it's a good part of the game, the puzzles. Combat system, my own personal expertise, I would say, and the one I work most with and so on. So the combat in this game is quite straightforward to begin with. It's like the classic Japanese role-playing game. It's turn-based. You do your turn, the opponent do their turn, right? Each character can do 1 action each. Of course, some action like Jak has attack twice, like double strike and so on, right? Very classic, but you still do 1 action you perform. So you tell him to do 2 double attacks, right? So on. But that being said, though, the game uses different system per character, which I actually think is really great. So you have 3 different characters, right? And they all have their own unique like fighting mechanics. So they have like the attacks and so on, but they have 1 special ability each, which are very different. Not only is it like, Celia, she can use magic, and then she have a bunch of different magic. I don't know. She has her magic, and then you have to like unlock different. I can show you, but you have to unlock like different magic you combine and so on. And actually, kind of complex to explain. That we did it here, but yeah, she has that thing. Jak has his own like kind of, I don't know, swordmanship thing. That one is more straightforward though. You pretty much level up the skill you want, and you go in there and you can pick a few different skills and you go into that. Then you have Rudy. He has this waiting, which is actually one of the reasons why Wild Arms 3 is a really good game. Because the system Rudy has, every character has the Wild Arms 3s. And that kind of turns it back when you said it, because I thought, it's great that everyone has a unique system Wild Arms. But it took the system that Rudy has and made it really, really awesome. So the way it works, Rudy has a gun. And his gun that has different kind of guns, or like the basic gun, different kind of adds on it. And they have weight limits and so on, so you have to decide, how much do you want? Do you want ammo on this thing, or do you want like firepower, or do you want accuracy? You have to decide all of that. It's a lot of different factors, and there is probably some kind of like perfect scenario where you can get this maximum damage and so on. But I actually think it's very good, because generally you run out of ammo on the best stuff. So if you want to go through the game, right, you have to kind of pick the best stuff and so on. And some parts of the game, like the secret areas of the game, is really, really hard. The game is quite hard. Not like super hard, but it's quite hard. And some of the areas there, you have to like, you're gonna use your ammo to defeat the opponents before the boss, because they are very, very strong. And then you have no ammo when you get to the boss, so you have to decide that. So it might be better to use like a less ammo and so on. So basically it's a good system. But yeah, Wild Arms 3, for example, has 100 for the game, which is way more complicated. But in that game, everyone uses 1 gun each. So here instead you only have Rudy. So that game is even much more impactful how you make the guns and so on. And it's kind of like ish talent tree in a way per character. So anyway, how does it look then? This is an actual image of Wild Arms 3 then, because I think it's better illustrated in Wild Arms 3 than in Wild Arms 1. So you have the character's gun, and then you can pick like, the hit ratio, the damage, the crit ratio, the weight. You have to control that. So, but how it works in Wild Arms 1 is more that Rudy has a lot of different skills. So he has like 10 different guns. You can then customize every ability he has. Do you want high damage? Do you want this and so on? So while the game as a surface is like a classic turn-based Japanese role-playing game, you hit the enemy, hit the back, as I mentioned earlier, and that's kind of simple. And Jak always is a simple character. He has just higher damage and high crit and so on. But the more you play the game, the more you find new guns. It's a big part of to find new weapons, and then you get ammo clips. There's quite a lot of customizability with how you do it. And Cecilia has a complete other system, which is a magic-based system, And then you combine different types of magic. This gives you different new magics, and that is very limited. You have like 10 spells on you, and you can create it. And of course, you can redo it, but you can only do it once. And outside the dungeon, you have to do it at a magic shop. So you have to be very prepared for the right spell and so on. And the character go into this like Super Saiyan form, like as in many role-playing games, a trance, a limit break mode. And in that mode, to see the abilities, it's like all the team or all the enemies and so on. There's a further plan to be like, well, this spell here is bad until I'm in a super form, and now it's really good. This spell here is always good, and it doesn't really do much in this form so much. There's a plan for that. And in Rudy's case, it's like, oh, you can shoot now without spending ammo, so you can have one gun that's like no ammo, one ammo total, and you can't really use it during boss battle. You get it once and then it's over, right? But during this transform, you can shoot it 10 times with it, right? So like, there's a lot of planning there and so on. But I would say Jack is more simple. It's kind of typical, just setting up and so on. But it's still a very interesting system, and it does something you have to definitely work around with. You can't just go in the blind and just press something. You have to prepare. You have to proactively plan for it if you want to beat any of the bosses we're going to talk about now. So the last thing I want to say about Wild Arms is that it's really good when it comes to the secret bosses and extra content in the game. So remember, this game is released before FF7, so it actually has quite pioneering in the number of extra bosses. So where FF6 and 5 so didn't have that much stuff, and like Secret of Mana 2 had like 1 and so on, they have very little of that. Wild Arms actually has like, I think it's like 7 or 8 or so. If you complete the whole Colosseum arena stuff, it's probably like 13, 14 on that. But it's already like a seriously story-based bosses with extra storyline, even some extra like stuff you can do in the game after you kind of beat the game. You can get some beat the game, you can get some extra story part about actually the ending, but you can still get that and so on, right? The same one of other Wild Arms games, 2 and 3 and 4 as well. And yeah, and also whole franchise has a huge number of extra bosses, hidden stuff and so on. So they did it very, very good actually. The only game that doesn't have the other created for that so on is it doesn't have like mini games. It has the puzzle games, but you don't have like straight up mini games. So if you go like Suikoden, you have the Iron Chef and so on. So you don't have that in the game, but you do have the puzzle games, and then you have a lot of bosses. And one thing, this will be a spoiler here then, but one thing the game does so good with it is that it really like sets up. It's so good too. I really liked it in the game. So I want to spoil too much here in the storyline. I'm gonna say one thing in the storyline. There's a lot of like evil old like mecha demons of the inner world that are gigantically big and so on, and they have them. I don't know. They are like, they don't work. Like they're in ruins, right, and so on. And they have them very early in the game. They have them as to kind of fair. It's like, oh, we have these things, and they have like 10,000 years ago. These were like some kind of living evil golems, and they have nothing so far. And of course, at the beginning of the game is very classic storyline there. Something is burning, it's attacked and so on. But yeah, but basically the enemies, right? The main opponent antagonist, they take these old golems, right? These gigantic like demonic golems, take them away because they're kind of sentient beings, really, right? Take them away, and you don't see them for a long time in the game. And then eventually you will face a few of them in the actual storyline, of course, because they will be, okay, spoiler here. Yeah, let's spoil it. Obviously they will be like reincarnated or get their like life force back or whatever, how they work. However, though, like half of them you don't see them again. Half of them you don't actually see. They're like lost, they're dropped. Maybe you rescue one of them, so to speak, so that it stops the demons from using them, right? And so on, right? And of course of that, they are surrounded around in the world, so you can find them in 4 or 5 different places and actually combat them, right? And they are much stronger in most of them than less bosses in the game, of course, because they're like free-willed. So there is one. So that is great. So I love the setup in the game. Because it's like for hour. That's like the first party hour in the game. So hour 2 or something. So you already know that, oh yeah, this is great stuff here. That plus the game uses this very classic Super Nintendo level of it that has a lot of secret bosses hidden in the game. Furthermore, these guys that you can find by like, oh, there's a legend about this thing. You have to play this fluting, and it's very interesting. So basically, it runs a lot of Final Fantasy games and so on in the later game. So, but this thing here reminds me of a lot of how to get the Osma, you have to get the secret stuff for FF9. So there's a lot of that. You can see that this game actually, I would say, pioneered before as to find them in Final Fantasy and all the like more famous and like recognized RPG games. But this thing here, I found is very, very similar to Ruby Weapon in FF7. It's got a desert, it's like a kind of scorpion thing, and basically you can see how it moves around and so on as in FF7. A few last words, my comments here, what you play this game. Again, the soundtrack, the music is ridiculously good. It's getting good every time. It's an amazing soundtrack. That is true for all the games. So I love all the 100 games. The storyline, likewise, is good in every game of them. Especially, I think, pretty much it's a lot of twists. I don't want to spoil it, but it's really good actually. The combat system, it's actually kinda, for its time, it's innovative with this. I do like it. It's not the best thing ever, but it's pretty good, and it has a decent difficulty level. And it's pretty good curve and so on. The only thing you have to look away from those graphics, which is it's much better outside towns, right? In the gameplay battles, it looks good sometimes, but also it's slightly enjoyable, I think, even today, because sometimes those effects the game has are they're kind of cool what they could do. So you have to take it with some light heart, right? And lastly, as I mentioned, I think the game is almost really pioneering how to hit bosses, because the game has more than 10. I think it has more than 10 single bosses in the game, a lot more, but it has at least almost 10 story based, which is oh, if you read this thing, read this book. And that is something the whole franchise always does. Where it's oh, you have to read this book here in this library, learn this code here, go over there and do that thing. Of course, those things are boring now if you just Google them on internet, but generally, back in the day at least, it was really, really fun to kind of figure out how to get all the bosses to fight them and so on. There's even one boss, when you defeat the boss, you get no loot. So I can say spoiler for that. You defeat this boss, it's like a Leviathan, it's in the water, right? You defeat her, I think it's her, and then you have to return to some kind of there is a story about this town always get shipwreck stuff and blah blah. You hear it earlier in the game. You have to go to that beach, and then you can find the loot from the boss after you defeat the boss. That's a motor area, right? So you have to go you want to play with the planet and go to that place. Those kind of details in the game are really, really amazing actually. So I absolutely recommend this game. I think it's an absolutely deserving cult classic, the most cult classic game to PlayStation 1 Wild Arms. So you should play. So I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, if you love this game, leave a comment or so on, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this game. So yeah, have a great day.